Ruthless Compassion is a podcast that shows you how to become fiercely kind. I'm the host, Dr. Marcia Sirota, and in each episode, I get into it with experts and regular folks about the things that get in the way of what we want. Things like addiction and mental health, isolation and loneliness, difficult family and work relationships, and the importance of self-care. I want to help you overcome the obstacles to living your best life, and I want to inspire you to become a powerful kindness warrior. Christina Crook is the award-winning author of The Joy of Missing Out, Finding Balance in a Wired World, which has established her as a leading voice on human flourishing in a digital age. Through her speaking and writing, she reveals how key shifts in our thinking can enable us to draw closer to one another, taking up the good burdens of local work and responsibilities. She writes about the value of focus, making space to create, and the meaning we find in more limited connections. She challenges the Western values of power, control, and success, revealing how wonder, trust, and discipline are central to the experience of being human and the keys to our joy. Welcome, Christina Crook, to the Ruthless Compassion podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it was a very interesting way that I found you because somebody reached out to me to interview me about the topic of JOMO recently, and I hadn't heard about it. And so, of course, I had to start researching what this meant. And it was fascinating. And here I found your book, The Joy of Missing Out, Finding Balance in a Wired World. Can you tell me how you got into this issue, into this topic?
Absolutely. So it started a couple of years back. I am actually a student of communication theory and media and have a media background. So when the internet and email and social media in particular sort of started advancing upon our daily lives, I was pretty keyed into noticing how my habits were changing. This was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And I had moved in the meantime from Vancouver to Toronto, sort of in one fell swoop, all of my relationships, or I would say about 90% of my relationships, were all of a sudden mediated in some way through technology, whether it was using my cell phone or through email or just checking up on people through Facebook. And I started to feel really uncomfortable with how my habits were changing and how I wasn't really going through the work of connecting more deeply with people. I was just sort of, as we often do, just sort of scrolling through people's social feeds and feeling like we know what's happening in their lives. But of course, there's a lot more going on beyond the surface. And so I decided that I wanted to figure out what would happen if I lived without the internet, if I didn't have sort of that crutch or that buffer between me and other people. And so I went completely offline. I ditched the internet for 31 days, and I took that time instead to, I used an older technology, a typewriter, and wrote a letter each day to one particular friend every single day, chronicling my experience offline and sort of ruminating on what I was noticing in culture and on all of that. So sort of fast forward to after that experiment, that kind of started me on this journey of writing on this topic and then obviously writing my book. So that's sort of where it began.
That's really interesting. I have like a million questions on my mind already. But the one thing I want to ask you is, how did you get your information about the world when you went offline?
So when you do not have the internet, you really have to rely on other people. You have to rely on them for all sorts of things. And one of the things in particular was information. I didn't know about the latest meme or the newest story breaking in the news. But what I quickly realized is that the big stories, like the really big stories, people are talking about them. So even at the coffee shop, I was waiting in line or chatting with the barista because I wasn't staring at Instagram, the people were talking about the stories. So actually when I was offline, I don't know if people will remember this, but there was the dress meme. So there was like this dress that was circulating online, and it was like the debate was, is it blue or is it purple? If I'm getting a blank stare from listeners, you won't remember it, but it was this big story.
Yes, I remember. Is it white and gold or black and blue?
Right, right. And so it sort of like highlights how perhaps unimportant being up on the latest news is. Like I was pretty okay missing that. But in terms of the really big breaking stories, they still got to me through other people. But obviously I wasn't able to do work in the same way. I did have to file 2 stories. I was still freelancing at the time, and I had to send them on a USB stick in the mail. One of them got lost through Canada Post. So that was definitely one of those moments where I went, yeah, email, I mean, is definitely a blessing and a curse, but I was missing email, at that point because it's free. It didn't cost me $20, to file my story. But yeah, there were definitely challenges, but I would say the good far outweighed the bad. By a mile.
So let's talk about the good. What were the positive things that you experienced when you went offline for a month?
Yeah, I think the first thing was really realizing how much of a false sense of control the web had given me, which sounds maybe like a negative thing, but I'll explain why it's a positive. The first day, because, the writer and editor in me likes to be able to make changes to things, especially words. I'd set up a blog about the experiment. It was called Letters from a Luddite. And the very first day, I realized that there was a line that I didn't like, that I wanted to tweak. And it was like really, bothering me for about an hour the first day in. But I couldn't do anything about it. There was nothing I could do about this to make a change. And I had to relinquish control. I had to let it go. And I would say that my experiment was really this incredible exercise in letting go of all the ways in which I control my image and my online presence to sort of portray a particular persona. That was really the first huge one. I would say the second one, and I think this resonates the most with people when I speak to them, is just the fact that my mind became so clear. It was like my brain before going off the internet was like a big black chalkboard that was covered in writing from just edge to edge. And it was so chock full, pun intended, of words and ideas and conflicting thoughts and all the things sort of bombarding me. And it was like someone put their hand into, it's like I did it to myself. Like I got a wet rag and I just wiped that thing until it was perfectly black and clean. Like I could think clearly. I felt so peaceful. I created because I wasn't inputting information in other people's voices. I did a ton of writing. I even had young kids at the time. I had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old at the time. I had time and space. So those were the biggest goods of that month.
So you did this for a month. What happened at the end of the month?
So yeah, it's sort of like going on, a water fast or something. You don't want to have a massive meal right afterwards. You'd kind of make yourself sick. I came back to the internet with some fear and trepidation. I didn't want to go back full bore. I didn't want to just fall back into my old ways of being. So I kind of came back gradually. The first thing I went back to was email. And actually right away, I unsubscribed to a massive amount of email, which I recommend for all people. Even just having those, newsletters or things we subscribe to, like through Old Navy or whatever these advertisements are, even though we're not actually spending time on them, we just let them amass in, say, our spam folder. Mentally, they're still taking up space, even as they, blip across our radar as they come in. So I unsubscribed to a huge amount of email, which was sort of the big first step. But yeah, it was sort of a gradual reemergence into the wired world.
I want to underscore that thing about unsubscribing, because it makes so much sense what you're saying. Here you are, you've just had this incredible opportunity to clear your mind, and now you have the risk of being overstimulated again. And it's so wonderful that you can just say no and say, I'm not going to get distracted. I'm not going to get overstimulated. I'm going to be very selective about what comes into my mental space.
Mm-hmm. There's, I think I do write about it in my book. There's a clip from the TV show, the BBC show Sherlock. Sherlock Holmes is like a complete and utter genius and makes all these connections that other people can't make. There's this wonderful scene where he's pointing to his head and he's talking to, oh my goodness, who's his buddy? Sherlock and
Watson.
He's talking to Watson and he's going off about social media and all these things. And he says, he points to his brain and he says, this thing right here, this is my hard drive. This is the thing that controls everything. Like he's gone this big rant about how, most people are inputting all of this, essentially garbage through social media, that he wants to kind of sort of protect his brain. And I think that we are not so vigilant in doing that. And even now, I'm 4 years later, it's just sort of the slow creep, the slow creep of information that seems good. Like, and a lot of it is really good. It's just that when we can't actually take action steps, when we hear the news and we hear of this terrible story in another part of the world and we can't do anything about it, that actually creates a sense of anxiety and even depression in us. We have to really be asking ourselves, is this information serving me well? So I think when I came back online, I was really, hyper-focused on asking those questions.
Yes, absolutely. Because, the subtitle of your book is Finding Balance in a Wired World. So we want to be informed citizens so that we can make good choices in terms of the officials we elect and, civic responsibility. But do we need to be overloaded with upsetting information 24 hours a day, 7 days a week?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. You're saying?
Oh, I was on a podcast recently, the Canada 2020 podcast, and I have a friend there. And it's based in Ottawa, and he sort of was asking me some questions about mindfulness, but particularly reflecting on, the environment he's in politically, and just, kind of the hellscape of political commentary on Twitter in particular, and just how much, we should be inputting. And it is very difficult to know when to stop because we do want to be informed citizens. I want to be an informed person, absolutely. But again, it's coming back to that question of, what meaningfully can we do with that information? And is it serving us well? Just being informed in itself isn't a good necessarily. We're told that that's true, but in actuality, in terms of our mental health, and even like deepening our relationships and meaningfully contributing to the world, more information is not necessarily a good in itself.
I totally agree. I can remember an experience I had at quite a young age where I realized that sensory overload is not a positive thing. I was in a wonderful art museum, and there was just the best art from all the eras of our human existence, and I was looking at all this beautiful stuff, and at a certain point I just felt like enough, like I just couldn't take in any more art, and I had to walk out of the museum, and I just had to breathe. And I realized that even surrounded by beauty and art and genius, there was a certain point of saturation after which it wasn't benefiting me.
That's such a great way of describing it, a certain point of saturation. I think most people would relate to that feeling. I know I do.
And so how do you now recommend that people live, in that balanced way? Because obviously we're not going to go offline for, extended periods of time. Life can't function anymore like that. So what do we do? How do we find that balance in a wired world?
Mm-hmm. The perennial question. There's some really practical things that I recommend for people. Unsubscribing is huge. I would recommend 4 things. Unsubscribe from all unnecessary email. It takes some time, and even do that with your social feeds. Unsubscribe from the people and brands that really aren't making you feel good or are not meaningfully, bettering your life. That's a big one. Do not have notifications on your phone. I am shocked by how many people don't do this. I'm shocked by how many people leave basically every notification on their phone. It is such an anxiety-inducing thing to see those messages and those alerts scroll into the front of your phone. And you're not actually mindfully choosing to engage with any of that information. You're just reacting. So if you really need to have one platform on with notifications due to your work or Slack or whatever that is, then leave that one on, but try and just close the rest of those down. I think it is achievable for people to carve out a half day or even better, a full day a week offline. And I know this is a huge step for people, but it is quite an old practice, this idea of a Sabbath or a day of rest. You know, almost every major religion in the world has some sort of day of taking pause. And it really bears a lot of fruit in our lives. So I would recommend people trying, if they really are struggling with digital, to try and even start with, you know, an afternoon, maybe Sunday afternoon where they actually go out without their phone. This is pretty revolutionary for a lot of people, and I shouldn't chuckle. Like, it is a big deal. But just sort of building these practices of disconnecting to make space for other things. The whole conversation for me, and I love that my book is titled The Joy of Missing Out because it actually originally wasn't, is the fact that it's creating space for us to reconnect to the joys away from our screens. It's not a negative message of we need to digital detox and this is so bad for us. Yeah, okay, there are some negative impacts, but there's also incredible opportunity and creativity and livelihoods and all of the beauty of what the web provides. But there also is all of this other beauty and these relationships and this wide, beautiful world around us. And so for me, it's really about carving out space for that. So yeah, I do really recommend a digital Sabbath of some kind.
I love that idea. And I have friends who actually observe the Sabbath and they turn everything off for, from sundown to sundown, and they really do get to rest. It's an amazing thing. And sometimes I feel a bit envious of them.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, this is the Ruthless Compassion podcast. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I feel like carving out those spaces is being compassionate to ourselves, because a lot of times the voices that we're hearing, even though we're, following people on social media in particular that, inspire us and are exciting and interesting, oftentimes it can breed a lot of jealousy and comparison. And I think, for myself anyways, having that space away from the screen helps me reconnect to the voice that tells me that I'm loved and okay, and I don't need to compare myself to other people, even the people that inspire me the most, that I have my own story and that it's worth telling and worth living, the way that I'm going to live it. So yeah, I think that JOMO can really help us building compassion, not only for ourselves, but of course it starts with us and for others.
And what do you see about the addictive nature of our technology? Because I think when we mention taking a break from technology for an afternoon or a day, some people get extremely anxious, and it's almost like they're going to go into withdrawal.
And they are. Because the primary, 4 big platforms that we use every day, Google, Facebook, Instagram, they all are designed to feed off of our weaknesses, our neural weaknesses. So I don't know if some people will remember this, but I remember when Facebook added their right-hand column real-time updates to their home screen. That didn't used to exist. Well, they figured out that if you can see real-time updates from people as they're posting them, the likelihood of you staying on Facebook for another 12 minutes goes through the roof. That is feeding off of our neural weakness. We want new things. We want to be a part of what's happening in people's lives. So the addictive nature piece is just a reality. We are being addicted to these technologies. It's done very intentionally. There is a persuasive technology lab down at Stanford University. Pretty much everyone that works in Silicon Valley has gone through this persuasive technology program. And that's what it is. It's persuading us to spend more time. And that's how they make money, right? The more clicks, the more time spent on a platform, the more money they make. It's a very, very simple equation. So we are really fighting back against Goliath. It is a giant. It is a giant that we're pushing back against, a giant attention sucker. So when you have those feelings, it's normal. It sucks. It totally sucks, but it's worth it. That's my sell.
Well, no, absolutely. I think that it's like with any kind of withdrawal, at first it's uncomfortable, it's unpleasant, but then you achieve freedom and you have that space in your mind, you have that clarity, you have that peace, and then you can be creative, you can connect to other people, you can commune with nature, you can really figure out what you truly want and what you need to do to be happy in life. So I think we all have to go through that initial withdrawal period that's not pleasant, but then on the other side of it, there's freedom.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And I think another part of being disconnected, and I know you were going to ask me kind of about what I'm working on now, but I think something that I'm thinking a lot about now, because my book's been out for a couple of years, is really the importance of stepping away from our screens to really see what's happening right in front of us, in terms of just like our neighbors and our neighborhood. Because when we're constantly just bolting from one event to the next, when we're constantly busy, when we're constantly looking down at our screens or being plugged in with podcasts, we're not present to what's happening right in front of us. And I live in the Junction in Toronto. I love my neighborhood. My neighborhood's a really mixed neighborhood, very different socioeconomic brackets sort of in the pocket that I'm in. And, there's real neighbors right around me that have real needs. And, if I go outside and garden, even for half an hour, I'll almost always strike up a conversation with one of them. And I get to hear what's happening. There's two single moms across the street, one very newly single, one who just had a baby on her own. And like they have real needs. And if I'm constantly plugged in and constantly just doing, I don't have space to even notice that they're there and that they have needs and that maybe I could serve them in some way. So I think that is a growing awareness for me. And in terms of just meaningfully engaging in our world and with each other, like we need to look up. We need to look up and see each other.
I love that line. We need to look up and see each other. That just touches my heart. So actually, you brought it up on your own. What are you up to these days? You said you had a prompt.
Oh, yeah. So about a year and a half ago, I went to New York and I met with Jonathan Fields. He's the founder of the Good Life Project. And we dreamed up this free prompt for people called Daily JOMO that people can get. It's not actually daily because I don't want to send you email every day. But it's a prompt that comes 3 times a week to reconnect you to the joys away from your devices. So people can sign up for that at dailyjomo.com. And that's just a fun thing that I've built, and I'm actually refining it right now to build in some more resources that people can access. But I'm also working on my next book, and it's all about this theme I just talked about, which is about coming closer and, what it means to be a neighbor and coming closer to ourselves. And I feel like it's an expansion of the joy of missing out, very much so. So that's what I'm working on.
That's fantastic. I think that's so important because especially these days, people seem to be more disconnected and even more disrespectful. There seems to be a lack of basic human compassion and empathy. And I don't know what exactly has brought it about, but probably many factors. But anything that helps us look up from our technology, look into each other's eyes and feel that empathy, feel that compassion has to be a really good thing.
Absolutely.
So to finish up, is there a call to action that you have for our listeners?
I would say, there's a story I love to tell, and maybe I'll just finish with that. So there's a family that I know in Ottawa, and we're coming into winter here in Canada, and As most Canadians know, the Rideau Canal in Ottawa freezes over every winter. And this family, they have 3 kids, and they go out. They have a Sunday tradition of going out and skating on the Rideau Canal. And afterwards, they have beaver tails. For those who don't know what a beaver tail is, it's a flat, hot donut-like cinnamon and sugar delicious treat. And when this family is out, no one is asking for an iPad. No one is asking to watch Netflix. They're all together. They're all having such a great time. And the reason why they're not asking for iPads and iPhones and Netflix and all the things is because they are so fully engaged in something that they just love to do. And so my call to action is find the things that you love away from your devices. Find the things that you truly find deep joy doing, and then your screens will become less compelling.
That's a wonderful call to action. Yeah, I already popped into my mind the things that I love, and I'm going to do more of them.
Awesome.
All right. Well, it's been really wonderful talking with you today, Christina. And again, your book is called The Joy of Missing Out, Finding Balance in a Wired World. And I recommend the listeners to go get a copy and see how you can embrace JOMO.
Thank you so much for having me.
Take care. That was the fascinating Christina Crook, and I'm Dr. Marcia Sirota. If you liked this podcast, please review it on iTunes, and you can sign up for my free monthly wellness newsletter at marciasirotamd.com, where you'll learn about my new online courses.